Nico Dwyer here for the 10th inning, giving you another episode of This Day in Sports History. In yesterday's episode, we saw Nolan Ryan add to his no-hitter collection, getting his 6th career no-hitter of 7 overall, a major league record. We don't have any more Nolan Ryan no-hitters to get into today, but there are all sorts of national championships that we will be getting into today. If y'all enjoy what you see, leave a like on the video. If you like this type of content and want more of it, hit that subscribe button. Let's get into it. This Day in Sports History. We start out today in 1880 in Major League Baseball. Lee Richmond, pitching for Worcester at the time, throws the first perfect game in MLB history when they would defeat Cleveland 1-0. Richmond on the day, 9 innings pitched, 5 strikeouts. The next perfect game would ironically only take place 5 days later, but then it would take about 15 years until we saw the next one. Now, perfect games were a much different thing back in the day. It was much easier to get these due to the rules, such as if you hit a batter, it didn't count. They were still at the plate. You couldn't hit a batter for them to get on base, and you were allowed to catch foul balls after one bounce. This is something that Richmond's teammates took advantage of 3 times throughout the game, and obviously those rules do not exist today. So therefore, it was a little bit easier to get a perfect game back then, but it's still one of the most difficult things to do as a pitcher in MLB. We move up to the 1894 British Open when J.H. Taylor won his first Open championship. This would be the first Open played outside of Scotland. Taylor would win by 5 strokes ahead of runner-up Douglas Rowland, and this would be the first of 5 overall majors for Taylor. Now we go to tennis at the U.S. National Championships in 1916. For the women's, defending champion Mola Mallory defeated Louise Hammond Raymond 6-0, 6-1. This would be the second of Mallory's 8 U.S. championships and 8 overall majors on the singles side. 3 years later in 1919, we move to men's golf at the U.S. Open. Walter Hagen won by 1 stroke ahead of Mike Brady in an 18-hole playoff to win his second and final U.S. Open. This would also be Hagen's second of 11 major titles throughout his career. Now we move up to 1925 and we have a world record in the long jump. William DeHart Hubbard set the world record at 25 feet, 10 3/4 inches, or 7.89 meters. Then 5 years later in 1930, we have another piece of history to get into. This would be the first and only time a heavyweight title would be won via disqualification. This matchup saw both contenders fighting for the championship as the championship was vacant. It saw Matt Schleming going up against Jack Sharkey. Sharkey was actually leading through the first 3 rounds. In the 4th round though, he hit a low blow on Schleming. That was enough. Schleming won the championship via disqualification. 6 years later in 1936, we go to the LPGA Western Open where we saw Opal Hill score a 3-2 to win over Sharkey's Dennehy to claim her 2nd consecutive major title and the 2nd of back-to-back wins for 2 overall majors in her career. A year later, we stick with golf in 1937, but we move to the men's side at the U.S. Open. Ralph Goodall, with a score of 7 under, won the first of 2 consecutive U.S. titles and the 2nd of 3 overall U.S. titles, 2 strokes ahead of runner-up Sam Snead. 2 years later in 1939, we stick with the U.S. Open, and Byron Nelson, with a score of 8 over, wins 3 strokes ahead of runner-up Craig Wood, 7 strokes ahead of Denny Shute in a 36-hole playoff. This would be Nelson's 2nd of 5 major championships in his career and his only U.S. Open victory. The same year in 1939, Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame finally had a place they could call home. The Hall of Fame was dedicated to Cooperstown, New York, where Abner Doubleday, quote, created baseball, and it would see the first 4 classes, the 36, 37, 38, and 39, all be permanently enshrined within Cooperstown. Now we go to 1947, which saw the British Amateur Women's Golf, which saw Babe Didrikson become the first American to ever win the event. Didrikson would defeat Jacqueline Gordon 5-4, and Didrikson is known as one of the greatest athletes of all time, golf just being one of the sports Didrikson excelled at. 1 year later at the 1948 U.S. Open on the men's side, Ben Hogan, with a score of 8 under, completely dominated the final 2 rounds and ended up winning 2 shots ahead of runner-up Jimmy DeMeritt. This would be Hogan's 3rd of 9 major titles in his career. At the same time the US Open was happening, the 80th edition of the Belmont Stakes was happening, and Citation ended up winning the Belmont Stakes with a time of 2 minutes, 28.2 seconds for an 11-length victory. With this victory at the Belmont, Citation would add his name to the winners of the Triple Crown. Now we move to 1954 and we go to Major League Baseball and we have a no-hitter occur. The Milwaukee Braves pitcher Jim Wilson no-hit the Philadelphia Phillies for a 2-0 victory. Wilson on the day, 9 innings pitched, 2 walks allowed, 6 strikeouts for the win, for a piece of history. Now we move up to 1965 and we have a world record marathon. Morio Shigematsu would run the marathon in 2 hours and 12 minutes to claim the world record, and he would end up holding this world record for 2 years. Now we go to 1970 in Major League Baseball and we have the historically famous LSD no-hitter by Doc Ellis. Ellis, though, didn't think he was starting this game. He thought he was scheduled to start the next game. Therefore, at a friend's house the night before, he took acid, stayed up late, was drinking all night long, and the next morning he was told that, no, you are starting this game. Got to the stadium 90 minutes before opening pitch, ended up throwing a no-hitter. One of the most incredible things you will ever see. Now all we need is just MLB to release the whole footage of that game and it will be a sight. But Doc Ellis threw his only no-hitter of his career on LSD in 1970. 7 years later, at the 1977 LPGA Championship, Chato Higuchi with a score of 5 under wins her only LPGA major, 3 strokes ahead of runner-ups Pat Bradley, Sandra Post, and Judy Rankin. Now we move to boxing in 1981 and we saw the champion Larry Holmes win via TKO over Leon Spinks in the 3rd round to retain the heavyweight boxing title. This would be Holmes' 10th successful defense of the title. Also on the day when Holmes successfully defended his title, we saw Major League Baseball begin a 50-day strike. And this strike was brought up for free agent compensation. It would last for 50 days until August 10th. Now we go right back to the LPGA Championship in 1983 and we saw Patty Sheehan with a score of 9 under come from 7 strokes behind to end up winning the major with a final round of 66, 6 under to finish 2 strokes ahead of runner-up Sandra Haney. This would be the first major title of 6 overall for Sheehan. Also in 1983, the Senior Tournament Players Championship, Miller Barber with a score of 10 under would be the inaugural champion, 1 stroke ahead of Gene Littler at the event. 1 year later at the 1984 NBA Finals, the Boston Celtics were going up against the Los Angeles Lakers, and the Boston Celtics ended up defeating the Lakers 4-3. The Game 7 victory for the Celtics was 111-102. In the series, we saw Larry Bird average 27 points and 14 rebounds. Dennis Johnson and Robert Parrish both averaged 15 plus for the Celtics. For the Lakers, we saw Kareem Abdul-Jabbar average 26.6, James Worthy with 22, Magic Johnson with 18 points and 13.6 assists. But in Game 7, Cedric Maxwell with 24 points, Larry Bird, Dennis Johnson 22 points, proved to be too much for the Lakers to handle in that game. They would end up winning the game, thanks also to the bench help, and they would claim their 15th championship of 17 overall. Now we go to 1988, and at the Senior Tournament Players Championship, Billy Casper with a score of 10 under won his final career major, 2 strokes ahead of runner-up Al Gieberger. Now we go to Major League Baseball in 1990, and we saw the Orioles' Cal Ripken Jr. play in his 1,308th consecutive game. This would push Ripken past Everett Scott and move into 2nd place all-time in the major leagues. 1 year later, at the 1991 NBA Championship, the Chicago Bulls were going up against the Los Angeles Lakers. The Bulls ended up defeating the Lakers 4-1. Michael Jordan averaged 31 points and 11.4 assists, with Scottie Pippen averaging 20.8 and 9.4 rebounds. For the Lakers, Magic Johnson had 18.6 points, 12.4 assists, Vlade Divac, Sam Perkins, and James Worthy all with 15 plus points, but this was Jordan and Pippen's time. They were not going to waste it. In the Game 5 victory for the Bulls, 108-101, Pippen had 32 points and 13 rebounds. Jordan added 30 points and 10 assists in the victory. Magic Johnson had a fantastic game, 16 points, 20 assists to go with that. But again, this was Pippen and Jordan's time. Nothing was going to stop them. This would be the first championship in the Bulls' original three-peat. Now we have history made again in Major League Baseball, this time in 1997, when the San Francisco Giants defeated the Texas Rangers 4-3. This was the first interleague game in baseball history which saw NL versus AL. Now we go back to basketball in 2002 for the NBA Finals, which saw the Los Angeles Lakers going up against the New Jersey Nets. The Lakers ended up sweeping the Nets 4-0 in the finals. The MVP went to Shaquille O'Neal, who averaged 36 points and 12 rebounds in the series. Although Shaq with 36 and 12 played great, Kobe didn't play much worse, averaging 27 points and 6 assists. For the Nets, Kenyon Martin and Jason Kidd were the big contributors, both with 20 plus points for an average, but it just wasn't enough. In Game 4, Shaq had 34 points, Kobe had 25 in the 113-107 victory. At the 2005 LPGA Championship, Annika Sorenstam, with a score of 11 under, won her 9th of 10 championships in her career, winning 3 strokes ahead of 15-year-old amateur Michelle Wie, who came in second place. 2 years later, and one of the greatest pitchers of our generation in Major League Baseball, Justin Verlander notched his first career no-hitter in 2007 against the Milwaukee Brewers. Verlander would end up striking out 12 in 9 innings with 4 walks for his first of 3 no-hitters, 2 with the Tigers, 1 with the Astros. Now we move up to 2009 at the Stanley Cup Finals. We saw the Pittsburgh Penguins going up against the Detroit Red Wings, and the Penguins ended up winning the series 4-3 and in Game 7, 2-1. This would be the Penguins' 3rd championship in their franchise, and Maxime Talbot scored 2 goals in the second period, 1 minute 13 seconds in, and 10 minute 47 seconds in. For the Red Wings, Jonathan Ericsson scored 14 minutes into the third, but the 2 goals from Talbot proved to be enough. That would be all the Penguins needed for the 2-1 victory, for the 4-3 series victory, and the Stanley Cup. In 2011, back in the NBA, the Miami Heat were going up against the Dallas Mavericks, and the Miami Heat, who were heavily favored in this series, would end up losing 4-2 against the Dallas Mavericks. For the series, Dirk Nowitzki averaged 26 points and 10 rebounds, with Jason Terry averaging 18 points. For the Heat, Dwayne Wade, 26.5, Chris Bosh, 18.5, LeBron James, 17.8. In Game 6, the Mavericks ended up defeating the Heat 105-95, with Jason Terry scoring 27 points off the bench, Dirk Nowitzki adding 21, giving the Mavericks the championship over, again, the heavily favored Miami Heat. Now we move up to the 2016 Stanley Cup Finals, which saw the Pittsburgh Penguins defeating the San Jose Sharks 4-2 in the series. In Game 6, the Penguins won 3-1. This would be their 4th title overall. In the first period, Brian Dumoulin scored for the Penguins. Then Logan Couture tied it up for the Sharks with 14 minutes remaining in the second period. Less than 1 minute later, though, Chris Letang added a goal, giving the Penguins the 2-1 lead. Then with a minute remaining in the game, the Sharks having no goalie in the net, Patrick Hornqvist scored an empty net goal, giving the Penguins the 3-1 lead, giving them just the icing on the cake goal that they would need to win the championship for their 4th Stanley Cup. Also in 2016 at the Women's PGA Championship, Brooke Henderson won her first major title on the first hole of a sudden death playoff against Lydia Ko. Then at the Senior Players Championship in 2016, Bernard Langer, with a score of 1 over, won his 3rd straight Players title. 1 year later at the 2017 NBA Finals, the Golden State Warriors defeated the reigning champion Cleveland Cavaliers 4-1 in the series. For the series, Kevin Durant averaged 35 points, Stephen Curry 27, Klay Thompson 16 for the Warriors. For the Cavaliers, LeBron James did everything he could do, averaged a triple-double, 33 points, 12 boards, 10 assists, with Kyrie Irving also averaging 29.4, Kevin Love with 16. It wasn't enough though. In the Game 5 victory, Kevin Durant scored 39 points, Stephen Curry scored 34, and Andre Iguodala scored 20 points. This would be too much for the overpowered Cavaliers team, even though LeBron, again, did everything he could. He scored 41 points in Game 5, Kyrie with 26, J.R. Smith with 25. The Warriors were just too powerful, added another championship. Then finally, at the 2019 Stanley Cup Final, the St. Louis Blues defeated the Boston Bruins for their first Stanley Cup in franchise history. The Blues defeated the Bruins for a 4-3 series victory, 4-1 in Game 7. Ryan O'Reilly and Alex Pietrangelo both scored a goal in the first period for the Blues. And then in the third period, Braden Shen and Zach Sanford added goals, giving them the 4-1 lead, giving them the 4-1 victory, giving them their first Stanley Cup. So there you have it. That's what happened on this day in sports history. If I left anything out, let me know down in the comment section. If I mispronounced any names, I do apologize. I hope you are all having a great day out there. For Nick Wire and the 10th inning, I will see you all tomorrow.